Miss Jackson's singing career really took off, of course, she had to, you know, pay her bills and eat. So she took on jobs such as a laundress, and also she became a beautician. So that's another known, or maybe not so known fact about Miss Mahalia Jackson. She was also a beautician. And of course, like I mentioned before, this was during the Great Depression. So you can only imagine what was going on then. Now, when it comes to her first actual recording, depends on who you ask. Because I was getting some conflicting information. And this is for the song called God Gonna Separate the Wheat from the Tares. One source tells me her first recording of that song was in 1931. Another source tells me it was recorded in 1934. So I'm not too sure which is correct. Maybe we can just do an average. Maybe it was in 1932 or 3. I don't know. But it's somewhere in the 1930s is when Mahalia recorded that first song, and pretty much things slowly, pretty much started to take off from there. I saw Nads, you came in. Welcome in. Welcome. Let's see here. So, and then once again, too, there's a lot of conflicting information with the years. I'm not sure why that is, but between the years 1945 and 1947, I figured I just kind of grouped the two together because I couldn't really figure out which was the correct year, but I digress a bit. She signed with the Apollo record label, and under that, she had her first hit song, Move On Up a Little Higher, which sold 8 million copies and became the most successful gospel recording in history at that time. A little bit of a reasoning behind that is because she utilized something that's called vamp, and it's a repeated phrase or a chord pattern that provides a foundation for solo improvisation. So just a little musical technicality, if you will.
Oh, God, God, separate the wheat from the tare. Didn't he say, let him go where he will obey? Tell that great holiday, God, go separate the wheat from the tare. Didn't he say?
All right, so that was Mahalia Jackson's recording of God's Gonna Separate the Wheat from the Tares. DJ KC Music, welcome on in. I saw you came in during the song there. Welcome, good evening. Happy to have you, sir. And thank you, IQ Remix, for explaining to us what exactly the vamp is. I'm just gonna reiterate what you wrote in the chat. And to answer that boy's question, so the vamp is the repeated phrase in the first two bars, and also and bar 4. So I hope that helped everyone to understand what the vamp was. So thank you, IQ Remix, for that. A lot of wonderful streamers and content creators in the chat. Make sure you guys are following each other, like IQ Remix, Chico Sing, That Boy Jur, DJ KC Music, Father Damien, and I might be missing a few, but please do not be offended. Oh yes, Spicy Saucy Sweet, of course. Yes, make sure you guys are following everyone, support everyone, and keep the community going. But funny enough, you know, I think it's safe to say for just about almost all musical artists, whether you decide to stay within one genre or you have a mixture, there's always going to be influences of other things from your lifetime, whether by nurture or nature, that help you to create your own sound, right? Why am I saying all of this? Is because from my research that I gathered during the week in preparation for this show, is that Mahalia had a way of merging gospel songs, texts from biblical themes, with influences of harmonies, rhythms, and the emotions of blues. Now, remember, I did mention that she's originally from New Orleans, so they had a lot of jazz and blues um, from that major city, right? So a little bit of that you could hear right now. Exactly, very bluesy. So you hear that influence in her music. So even though she was by trade a gospel singer, you get those other influences in her work, right? So just a little something to take note of. One other thing too, Mahalia was definitely a woman of strong principle, and she fiercely held on to her convictions and her beliefs. In that, when it came to her profession, she was a stickler as to where she performed, right? And what kind of songs she performed. So she refused to sing songs other than gospel. Um, she was encouraged and asked to sing blues, but because they were like, well, you definitely have the voice for it, it'll be a great market and blah blah blah. But she was like, nope. Gospel music is where God called me to sing and to reach the soul. So that's where I'm gonna stay. I'm not gonna deviate from that. Another thing that she refused to um, compromise, if you will, was that she refused to sing in venues, and surroundings where she deemed inappropriate. Yeah, that was definitely something that she was very much, she held to her convictions. Certain things she did not budge from. She did not deviate. She did not compromise. And I'm sure it may have ruffled some feathers, but you know what? Good for her. Like Nat said earlier in the chat, because you know what? If you don't stand for something, you're definitely gonna fall for anything. So that's just my 2 cents with that.
You got to learn to show kindness to those that feel that nobody cares about them. And I'd rather do that than to be one of these, some of these so-called smart folks telling them they're able to do this, that, and other, when all blessings come from God. And how can I love God without loving you, whom I've never seen? God made man in his image, and I must first treat him right, then I'm treating my God right.
But not only was her faith in God something that she held on to, she also in the interview piece there, she did talk about the civil rights movement, and this is something I don't even remember growing up really hearing much about, like being taught much about how Mahalia was such a major part in the civil rights movement. Yeah, I knew that she was a gospel singer, but as I was putting this show together, I was thinking to myself, I don't remember being taught in school. Like, they go through the normal, like the popular ones, the MLK, Malcolm X, the Marcus Garvey, all those the popular ones everyone knows about. But I think more needs to be done in terms of really honing down. Yes, exactly. It's a lot that's skipped. And this part here with Mahalia being part of the civil rights movement and being a dear friend of Dr. Martin Luther King, this is something that really should be taught in schools in North America. It's very important. And, I pretty much learned this as an adult. But, for the newer generation, the young minds that are coming up, I think it's so imperative that they learn this now. So we're going to get into that a little bit. Like I was just saying, she utilized her personal power to help Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the civil rights movement. In 1956, she went to Montgomery, Alabama for a concert to raise money for the cause. And of course, remember, we're talking about Jim Crow and all that was going on here in the United States, right? And of course, the powers that be, quote unquote, whosoever, there were death threats on her life. There were. I'm sure she got the phone calls and the hate mail and whatever they were doing back then. But I'm being a woman of faith. I mean, I'm sure as my grandmother always used to say, fear and faith cannot coexist. It's either one or the other type thing, right? So she went anyway. She went anyway. She did what she had to do. And 15 days after the concert, the U.S. federal government made Alabama follow the law and desegregate the buses. Because remember, it was segregate buses, segregate schools, segregate um, water fountains, eating places, all of that stuff, you know. So it was a lot going on. There's still a lot going on, but you know, this was the current events of the day. I mean, I can only imagine what it was like back then. You know, as a black person, you have to be so much on your p's and q's. You know, you can only drink from this water fountain here that's marked colored. Like, really? Take every representative of whatever skin color, whether you're pale as the balls of my eye or black as my hair, and everything in between, and run a knife through all of us. I'm sure we all bleed the same red blood, right? We all get hungry. We all have to use the bathroom. We all have to bathe. Like, I mean, come on, really? I can't. I don't know. I have to say, thank God I wasn't born then because I probably definitely would have been dead already or something, or in jail, or both. But I digress.